Hello, Beta Group. My reading is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, verses 40 through 56. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting on him. Just then there came a man named Jairus, a leader of the synagogue. He fell at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, who was dying. As he went, the crowds pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years, and though she had spent all she had on physicians, no one could cure her. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his clothes, and immediately her hemorrhage stopped. Then Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowd surround you and press in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I know that power had gone out from me." When the woman saw that she could not remain hidden, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any longer." When Jesus heard this, he replied, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be saved." When he came to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. They were all weeping and wailing for her, but he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and called out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Then he directed them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What I see in this scene is Jesus getting off the boat and a large crowd waiting for him, clapping, cheering, happy to see him as they have been waiting a long time. I see the disciples' surprised look when a ruler of the synagogue not only joins the crowd, but falls at the feet of Jesus, begging him to come to his home to heal his young daughter. I see the large crowd of people pushing and making their way to get close to Jesus. And in that crowd, I see a woman trying to remain obscure, as she would be considered unclean and not welcomed in this crowd. But I see pain in her eyes and also a look of determination, as she would even crawl to touch Jesus. I see Jesus stopping, looking around for a person he knows just touched him. I see the healed woman who was bent over with pain now standing tall, joyfully weeping because she knows she has been healed. As Jesus looked for the one who touched him, she comes forward and makes herself known to the healer. I see the light of Jesus' countenance as he gazes upon this woman he has just healed, and with kindness in his eyes, he smiles and affirms that he has indeed healed her. And then the scene changes from people rejoicing over the woman's healing to a man walking away from Jairus as he has just delivered the news that his daughter has died. I see Jairus drop to his knees in sorrow. It consumes his soul. The color drains from his face as fear, anger, and heartbreak grip his soul simultaneously. I see Jesus with compassion and confidence tell Jairus, "Do not fear, just believe," as he assures him that his daughter is not dead. I see the color return and a look of hope on Jairus' face as he holds on to every word that Jesus has just spoken. I see Jesus gather Peter, John, and James, and they journey to Jairus' house. I see Jairus walking quickly, anxiously, anticipating with each step, looking into his daughter's eyes again, holding her, kissing her, thanking God for her resurrected life. And I see his house surrounded by the paid weepers and wailers, and how Jesus, Jairus, and the disciples push their way through this crowd. The door opens and Jairus' wife, her face saturated with tears, her eyes swollen, and she's bent over with grief as her only daughter has just died. I see Jesus with authority command everyone to leave except his disciples and the girl's parents. I also see Jesus inform the paid wailers and onlookers that the young girl is not dead. That same crowd looks at Jesus with disdain and mock and laugh at his proclamation that the girl was not dead. I see Jesus with authority, but with a kind voice, like a mother calling for her child to get up. Say, "Child, get up." The young girl opens her eyes as if she were just asleep. I see the look on the parents' face of bewilderment, relief, and ecstatic joy as they embrace their daughter, hugging and kissing her, not wanting to let her go. And then the practical Jesus reminding the parents to feed the young girl as she is probably hungry. What I hear when Jesus exits the boat and meets the men, women, and children are sounds of cheering, clapping, and people calling Rabbi, Master, Jesus. I hear Jairus in that same crowd crying as he begs Jesus to come to his house to heal his dying daughter. I also hear a woman crying as she makes her way through the pressing crowd, desperate to reach her only hope of healing after 12 years of suffering. When she's able to touch the hem of his clothes, she knows that she's instantly healed. And I then hear her cry, but now her tears of pain are tears of rejoicing over her miraculous healing. I also hear the crowds rejoicing with her as they too are looking for a miracle from Jesus. I hear Jesus affectionately call her daughter, and he affirms her healing and instructs her to go in peace. The scene changes from the joy of the woman's healing to hearing the sad news from a messenger that Jairus' daughter is dead. I hear Jairus cry bitterly, but I hear the tender voice of Jesus encouraging him to not fear and just believe, assuring him that the daughter is not dead. As Jesus, Peter, John, and James enter Jairus' house, I hear Jesus with authority command the wailers and weepers to be quiet, telling them the girl is not dead. I then hear the mocking laughter from the mourners and the crowds as they laugh at Jesus for making such a claim. I hear the weeping of the child's mother as she holds her lifeless daughter. And then Jesus, with tender authority, commands the young girl to get up. I hear gasps and outbursts of joy and laughter and rejoicing as the father and mother embrace and kiss their cherished daughter. I hear Jesus to tell the parents to give their daughter something to eat, and then he instructs them to not tell anyone what happened. What I smell in the scene when Jesus gets out of the boat is lake water and fish. I smell the outdoors, fresh air, sun-baked earth, mixed with the smells of the leather sandals and body odor from so many people crowded together. The woman who had been bleeding for 12 years had no doubt a distinct odor from fresh and dried blood, as the luxuries we enjoy today to cover odors were not available so long ago. As a synagogue ruler, Jairus undoubtedly lived in a clean house, and I can smell the cleanness of that house, but I'm sure that that clean house was the smell of the putrid death smell permeated and prevailed in that house. As the large crowd moved about to reach Jesus, I taste the dust that had been stirred up as it reaches my nose and mouth, and I also taste the salty tears of Jairus as he grieves the loss of his only daughter, and the tears of the woman as she presses through in desperation to reach her healer. Her tears were not only from the pain she felt every day for the last 12 years, but also from fear that if she didn't reach the healer, she would eventually be consumed by her disease, as no doctor could heal her. I taste the freshly baked bread prepared with love for the young girl who was raised from the dead. When I think about what I feel how overwhelmed Jesus must have felt at the sight of another crowd. He didn't even have time to catch his breath when he reached the shore before the crowd surrounded him. Yet I feel his excitement and anticipation to minister to those he was called to, and the relief that they were happy to see him, as the people he left from the other side of the lake had asked him to leave. I feel the humility of the prominent synagogue ruler as he fell at the feet of Jesus, publicly expressing his faith and trust in this controversial Jesus. I feel the desperate hope in his heart for Jesus to heal his daughter. I feel the anxiousness of the woman with the blood disease as she saw so many others trying to reach Jesus, and yet I feel her hope and faith rise with every step of determination she made as she made her way through the crowd to touch the only one who could heal her. I feel the surge of power go through her body as her bleeding instantly stopped. The weight, pain, embarrassment, weariness, and burden of 12 years was gone. I imagine her heart racing fast as she tries to process the miracle that had just happened. The gratitude and love for her Savior flowing from the joyful tears that saturate her face. I feel Jairus' overwhelming sorrow as he received news not to bother Jesus that his daughter was dead, immediately contrasted, though, by the life-giving words of Jesus telling him not to be afraid, to just believe and his daughter would live. I feel the piercing stares of the paid weepers and mourners as they mocked and laughed at Jesus when he rebuked them to stop wailing because the girl was not dead. I feel the heart of the mother. As a mother myself, I cannot imagine the anguish and sorrow that would consume my being as I held my lifeless child, and then the confusion why her husband would ask for Jesus, whom was not respected by the synagogue, to heal her daughter. I feel the compassion and gentleness of Jesus as he enters Jairus' home, respectfully yet with authority. I feel the utter jubilation from the whole household when the little girl got up at the command of Jesus. I feel the utter astonishment of Jairus and his wife at the sublime realization that their daughter was raised from the dead by Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Until our next attending video, blessings to you, Beta Group, and I'll see you soon. God bless.